The transfer trucks were already loaded when Patton stepped into the yard and took the report from a nervous clerk, but he stopped walking after reading one line near the bottom of the page. The German prisoners kept climbing aboard, guards kept counting names, and the engines kept running until Patton folded the paper once, pointed at the lead truck, and ordered every man removed before it carried the wrong prisoner out of the camp forever. The transfer was supposed to begin before noon, with 50 German prisoners moved from Camp Ashford to a larger holding facility farther west. American guards had already checked the truck numbers, clerks had already prepared the passenger lists, and the prisoners had already been divided into groups beside the gate. Nothing about the morning looked unusual until General George Patton arrived without warning and asked to see the transfer report before the first vehicle moved. The camp commander handed him the file quickly, expecting only a brief inspection. Patton read the top page, turned once to the second, and stopped at a single line written beneath the medical notes. It stated that one prisoner had been cleared for movement despite being listed in another file as unavailable for transport. The contradiction was small enough for a tired clerk to miss, yet Patton's face changed because the same name appeared again in the witness column of a separate investigation. Captain Ernst Vogel, the senior German officer among the prisoners, immediately complained that the trucks were being delayed without cause. He said the men had already been counted, the destination had already been approved, and further confusion would only create disorder. Several prisoners near the loading line agreed, not because they trusted Vogel fully, but because any transfer delay usually meant hours of standing in the yard under guard. Patton ignored the complaint and ordered the named prisoner brought forward. His name was Karl Brenner, a thin German clerk who had worked in a records office during the final German retreat. Brenner stepped out of the second truck looking confused, carrying a small cloth bag and a transfer tag already tied to his coat. He told the interpreter he had been told that his reassignment was routine. The report said otherwise. Brenner was scheduled to testify that afternoon about altered prisoner records from another camp, yet his transfer order would have removed him before the questioning began. The American commander looked embarrassed when Patton read the two documents side by side. The mistake might have been careless administration, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. Vogel stepped forward again and insisted that Brenner was not important. He claimed the man was only a minor clerk who repeated rumors to make himself useful. Patton looked from Vogel to the trucks and ordered every prisoner removed from the vehicles until the transfer list was rebuilt from the original files. The engines were shut off one by one, and the yard shifted from routine movement into open suspicion. The first conflict erupted when one of the prisoner orderlies tried to collect Brenner's cloth bag before the guards could search it. Brenner grabbed the strap, the orderly pulled harder, and the bag tore open across the dirt. Several folded papers spilled out, including a copy of the same transfer list Patton held, but this version had Brenner's name crossed out and replaced with another man's tag number. The guards seized the orderly and separated Brenner from the line. Vogel claimed the papers proved nothing because prisoners often copied lists from rumor, yet Patton ordered the administration office sealed and every transfer file removed to the yard under guard. The trucks remained at the gate, empty and silent, while the prisoners realized the one line Patton had read might have stopped more than a routine transfer. Subscribe for more forgotten German POW stories like this one. The escalation began inside the administration office, where American clerks discovered that the transfer list had passed through 3 different hands before reaching the trucks. The first copy matched the camp commander's order, the second added several medical clearances, and the third replaced 2 names without a written explanation. Patton ordered all 3 versions pinned to a board so the changes could be seen in sequence rather than argued about in fragments. Brenner identified the handwriting on the second copy as belonging to a German prisoner assistant named Otto Keller, who had been used as a translator for old German records. Keller was brought from the clerk's room within minutes, but he denied changing any names and claimed he merely copied what American staff gave him. Patton asked why his copy cleared a witness for transfer on the same afternoon he was scheduled to testify, and Keller answered too quickly that he did not know Brenner was a witness. That answer created a new problem because Brenner's witness status was not public. Only the camp commander, the records officer, and the German prisoner leadership knew he was scheduled to speak. Patton ordered Vogel's search for documents, and inside Vogel's coat lining guards found a folded schedule of witness interviews written in German. Vogel claimed it was passed to him anonymously, but Brenner recognized the paper as a sheet taken from the records office. The escalation moved from paperwork to the barracks when Keller suddenly admitted that a sealed envelope had been hidden near Brenner's bunk the night before. Guards searched the area and found the envelope wedged behind a loose board. Inside were 2 ration coupons, a destination tag, and a note telling Brenner to board quietly if he wanted protection at the next camp. The note used no name, but the handwriting matched one of the altered list copies. Brenner grew pale when the interpreter read it aloud. He said a prisoner had warned him that testifying would make him a traitor among the German officers, and that transfer might be his only chance to avoid punishment. Patton ordered the trucks searched next, because if someone wanted Brenner moved badly enough to forge records, they might have prepared something inside the vehicle. In the second truck, guards found a blanket roll tied beneath a bench. Inside it were civilian clothes, a hidden pencil, and a small notebook containing several prisoner names with check marks beside them. Brenner's name had not been checked, but 2 men already sitting in the transfer group had been marked. One of them had previously worked with Brenner in the retreat records office. The camp commander ordered those 2 men removed from the transfer line. One insisted he knew nothing, but the other broke almost immediately when shown the notebook. He said the transfer was supposed to scatter witnesses across different camps so no single investigation could connect their testimony. Brenner was not the only target. He was only the first mistake Patton had noticed. Vogel's confidence weakened as the evidence spread across the tables. He no longer argued about the delay, but watched each recovered object as if measuring which one might damage him most. Patton noticed the shift and ordered the original transport crate opened, the one containing destination packets for every truck. At the bottom lay a sealed file marked, completed before departure, even though no truck had yet left the camp. When the file was opened, the escalation became unavoidable. It contained arrival confirmations for several prisoners still standing in the yard, already signed and dated for the next day. The transfer had not simply been altered. Parts of it had been finished on paper before the men moved, which meant someone intended the records to prove a journey before the witnesses could contradict it. The major consequence arrived when Patton ordered the transfer canceled entirely and replaced by a full witness count. Every prisoner connected to the altered records office was pulled from the yard and placed under separate guard, while the remaining men were sent back to barracks without their destination tags. The visible cancellation shocked the camp because transfers were rarely stopped once trucks had been loaded, and this one had collapsed in front of everyone. Brenner gave his first full statement that afternoon. He described how records had been rewritten during the German retreat, especially for prisoners who had seen wounded men abandoned, transport numbers changed, or personal property removed before surrender. He said Vogel had not personally handled every form, but he knew which clerks had access, which men were frightened, and which witnesses could be moved before American investigators understood the pattern. The consequence deepened when Keller admitted that Vogel had instructed him to adjust names only after American clerks prepared the first transfer draft. That method made the changes look like normal administrative corrections. Keller said he had obeyed because Vogel controlled food favors, Barak assignments, and the Internal Officer Council. He also said Brenner's removal had been urgent because Brenner remembered a ledger from the retreat camp that had never reached American hands. Patton ordered a search for any reference to that missing ledger. Guards checked property bags, Barak shelves, kitchen storage, and the chapel cabinet where German officers sometimes kept approved personal papers. In the chapel cabinet, They found a torn index page listing transport numbers beside initials. Brenner identified several entries as witnesses who had been split across camps during the retreat. The discovery changed the camp atmosphere. Men who had complained about the stop transfer now understood that some prisoners might have been moved to prevent testimony, not for routine processing. Several prisoners came forward with small details. A tag number changed during intake, a letter redirected, a man reassigned after speaking too loudly near the record's hut. None of the details stood alone, but together they expanded the case. Vogel tried to stop the flow by claiming the Americans were encouraging prisoners to accuse each other for better treatment. Patton responded by ordering that every statement be taken publicly, with the speaker's words repeated by an interpreter and written in front of witnesses. That process reduced rumor and forced each man to attach his name to what he said. Vogel lost the fog he had depended on. The major consequence reached the medical tent when an injured German prisoner recognized one of the altered names from the arrival confirmations. He said the man had been placed on a stretcher convoy 2 weeks earlier, then removed from the list after arguing with Vogel about missing property. The medical tag from that convoy was found in a drawer, but the prisoner's final destination line had been scraped nearly blank. Patton ordered the scraped tag placed beside the forged arrival confirmations in the hidden notebook. The evidence now showed a system that touched transport, medical movement, witness schedules, and prisoner leadership. The stop transfer had exposed more than one false list. It revealed a method for moving inconvenient men away before they could be heard. By evening, the trucks were still parked outside the gate, but their purpose had changed. They no longer carried prisoners west. They became storage for sealed evidence packets waiting for military investigators. Brenner watched the guards load the documents and realized that the one line Patton noticed had kept him from becoming another corrected name on a paper trail built to outlive the truth. The major reversal began the next morning when Vogel asked to speak privately and claimed he had altered the transfer to protect Brenner from men who wanted him harmed. The commander doubted him, but Patton allowed the statement because lies often revealed structure when spoken under pressure. Vogel said German hardliners inside the camp had marked Brenner as a traitor and that moving him west was the only way to keep him alive. For several minutes, the reversal seemed possible. Keller admitted that threats against Brenner had circulated after his witness interview was announced. Another prisoner confirmed that Brenner's bunk had been searched before the transfer. Vogel used those details to argue that Patton had stopped a protective measure without understanding internal German danger. The accusation carried enough truth to make the officers hesitate. Then Brenner asked one question through the interpreter. If Vogel meant to protect him, why had the arrival confirmation listed him under another man's tag number? Vogel answered that false identity sometimes saved a prisoner. Brenner then pointed to the sealed file and asked why 2 other witnesses were also marked as already arrived at a camp they had never reached. Vogel did not answer. The reversal turned against him when the medical orderly from the previous day produced a second notebook hidden inside his bedding. He said Vogel had given it to him for safekeeping and told him to destroy it if the transfer failed. The notebook contained 2 sets of names, men to be protected and men to be silenced. Brenner appeared in the second column, not the first. Patton ordered Vogel brought into the yard and made the 2 notebooks, the forged confirmations, and the second name column visible to all witnesses. The prisoner leaders who had supported Vogel began stepping back from him. He tried to explain that the labels were misunderstood, but the orderly stated that silenced meant moved where no investigator could easily find them. His voice shook, yet he did not withdraw the statement. The reversal expanded when a search team located the missing retreat ledger in the coal shed, hidden inside a box of broken tools. Keller had drawn a rough map to the hiding place after hearing Vogel's protection claim. The ledger connected several altered transfers to the same group of German officers, and Vogel's initials appeared beside notes requesting clean movement before surrender. Patton ordered the transfer trucks repurposed immediately. Instead of moving the original 50 prisoners, they would transport evidence, Brenner, Keller, the medical orderly, and several protected witnesses to a secure investigation site under American escort. Vogel protested that removing them would let them invent stories outside camp control, but that argument revealed his true fear. He needed witnesses near his influence to keep their statements fragile. The major reversal ended when the camp commander read the witness protection order aloud. Brenner was no longer a misplaced transfer name. He was a protected witness in an investigation that now included forged transport files, false arrivals, altered medical tags, and a recovered retreat ledger. The transfer Patton stopped had not been canceled. It had been transformed into the very thing Vogel tried to prevent. The final irreversible event began at dawn, when the new convoy formed under heavier guard than the original transfer had received. Brenner, Keller, the medical orderly, and 5 named witnesses were placed in the first truck with American MPs seated beside them. The evidence crates were loaded into the second truck, each packet sealed, numbered, and signed by 2 officers. Vogel stood behind the fence watching the transfer he had tried to control become a guarded movement beyond his reach. Before the trucks left, Patton ordered one final verification in the yard. Each witness stepped forward, stated his name, confirmed his tag number, and identified which document connected him to the case. Brenner identified the altered clearance line. Keller identified the copied transfer list. The orderly identified the second notebook. Another prisoner identified the scraped medical tag. The statements were recorded before the engine started. The final danger came when a prisoner near the fence shouted that one witness had lied about his name. The convoy paused, and the yard tightened with suspicion. Patton ordered the man brought forward instead of ignored. Under questioning, he admitted that Vogel's followers had told him to challenge the identity at the last moment, hoping the delay would force a new review and keep the witness inside the camp. That admission made the departure irreversible. Patton ordered the false challenger removed from the yard and added to the witness intimidation file. Then he had the contested witness's identity confirmed against 3 separate documents before everyone present. The tactic failed publicly, and with its failure went the last chance to stop the convoy through confusion. The trucks rolled through the gates slowly, not like ordinary prisoner transport, but like a moving record of everything uncovered in the yard. Brenner looked through the canvas opening as the camp receded behind him. The transfer he had feared now carried him toward protection because one line in one report had been read by the right man before the wrong truck moved. Back inside the camp, Patton ordered the transfer board rewritten. The canceled movement remained posted with red marks explaining why it had been stopped, while the new witness convoy was recorded under protected status. Every prisoner could see the difference between routine transport and manipulated transport. The distinction mattered because Vogel's power had lived in confusing the two. Vogel was removed from the officer council before noon. The order was read in front of the barracks, and no prisoner leader was allowed to replace him until American officers reviewed internal assignments. His punishment was not theatrical, yet it removed the position that let him influence lists, rumors, and witness fear. The man who tried to move others by paper was trapped by paper himself. By evening, confirmation arrived that the witness convoy had reached the investigation site safely, with all sealed evidence intact. Patton handed the message to the camp commander and told him that no transfer would move again until every witness conflict was checked first. The final irreversible event was not only the convoy's arrival. It was the new rule that no line near the bottom of a report would ever again be treated as harmless. The stopped trucks left deep tire marks in the camp yard that remained visible for days after the evidence convoy departed. Prisoners walked past them on the way to roll call, and many glanced toward the transfer board where Brenner's name had been moved from routine transport to protected witness. Patton had not needed a speech to change the camp. He read one line, stopped one truck, and exposed the hidden machinery behind a transfer that was never meant to be questioned. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WW2 stories.